Could one frustrating update be the moment Windows quietly stopped being the default choice for millions of people? I always assumed walking away from Windows would mean giving something up. Less compatibility, more headaches, more compromises. Then I accidentally spent over a month barely touching a Windows machine at all, and what surprised me wasn't what I lost. It was what I never missed. That completely changed the way I think about modern computers. If you had asked me a year ago whether I could replace Windows in my daily routine, my answer would have been immediate. Absolutely not. My work revolves around content creation. I edit videos. I manage digital marketing projects. I jump between creative software, AI tools, browsers, cloud services, documents, and games. That sounds exactly like the kind of workload Windows was built to dominate. Instead, something unexpected happened. Without really planning it, my workflow slowly collapsed into just two devices. One MacBook powered by Apple Silicon, one handheld gaming PC running SteamOS. The desktop Windows PC sitting nearby slowly became the computer I looked at instead of the one I actually used. The funny part is that I didn't quit Windows because of some massive technical failure. There wasn't one catastrophic crash, no corrupted files, no dramatic blue screen. It was something much smaller, an update. I had work waiting, important files sitting on my Windows drive. Deadlines don't care about operating system updates. Yet I was forced to sit there watching progress bars instead of actually finishing what I needed to finish. Everybody jokes about Windows Update. Everyone has memes about it. But when you're racing against a deadline, it stops being funny. That tiny interruption planted a dangerous question in my head. What if I simply stopped relying on Windows altogether? At first, even I thought the experiment would fail within days. Instead, it kept working. Now here's the important part. This isn't a universal recommendation. If you're a professional working in specialized CAD software, engineering environments, industrial simulation, enterprise Windows infrastructure, or heavy 3D production pipelines that depend on Windows-exclusive applications, your reality is different. But for someone whose life revolves around multimedia production, online work, AI tools, communication, and gaming, the answer became surprisingly complicated. Let's start with work. People often imagine content creators using only one editing application. That's almost never true. A typical day means opening Photoshop for thumbnails, Illustrator for vector assets, InDesign for marketing documents, Premiere Pro for editing, After Effects for motion graphics, browsers with dozens of tabs, cloud storage, AI assistants, messaging apps, spreadsheets, presentations, PDFs, and enough Chrome windows to make any computer cry. The strange thing is that none of this felt slower after leaving Windows. Actually, certain parts became smoother. One of the biggest surprises came from AI. Modern workflows aren't just about editing anymore. They're about accelerating decisions. Large language models, coding assistants, writing tools, research helpers, image generation, automation, they're becoming everyday software. In my experience, several of these AI tools simply felt more polished on macOS. The integration was cleaner. The responsiveness felt better. Automation behaved more consistently. Instead of constantly thinking about the computer, I stayed focused on what I was actually trying to produce. That distinction matters more than people realize. The fastest computer isn't necessarily the one with the biggest benchmark score. It's the one that interrupts you the least. That's something benchmark charts almost never measure. Every review online loves comparing CPU percentages, GPU rendering times, synthetic performance, battery graphs. But very few people ask an entirely different question. How often does this computer get in your way? That's the metric that quietly changes your life. Take something incredibly simple. Opening the laptop. Apple Silicon machines wake almost instantly. Open the lid. Authenticate. You're exactly where you left off. No waiting, no thinking, no rebuilding momentum. That sounds trivial until you repeat it hundreds of times every month. Tiny delays accumulate. Tiny conveniences accumulate too. Eventually, one of them wins. Then there's battery life. People love throwing around impressive numbers: 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours. But battery isn't really about hours, it's about confidence. Can you leave the charger behind? Can you move from your desk to the couch? Can you walk into a meeting? Can you spend an afternoon editing in a coffee shop? Can you travel without constantly scanning airports for outlets? That's freedom. It's difficult to quantify. It's even harder to give up once you have it. Display consistency also became more important than I expected. Using a high-resolution external monitor alongside the MacBook display meant colors remained remarkably consistent. Creative work becomes easier when you're not constantly second-guessing whether the thumbnail looks different on another screen. Again, it's one of those invisible advantages. Nobody buys a computer because colors match across displays, but people absolutely notice when they don't. Performance is another area where expectations don't match reality. Apple's M3 processor isn't the most powerful chip available. Let's just say that clearly. There are Windows systems that absolutely crush it in raw computational horsepower, but raw power isn't the whole story. Media engines matter. Hardware acceleration matters. Software optimization matters. Encoding efficiency matters. When your workload revolves around editing video instead of rendering Hollywood visual effects, those optimizations often outweigh brute force specifications. That's why so many creators report similar experiences. Not because Apple Silicon magically breaks the laws of physics, because it's unusually good at the exact tasks many creators perform every day. Then there's security. This topic usually becomes emotional. Some people treat operating systems like sports teams. That's missing the point. If your livelihood depends on social media accounts, business assets, client credentials, financial access, cloud storage, passwords, authentication keys, and sensitive documents, security isn't marketing, it's risk management. I naturally found myself trusting the MacBook with more sensitive accounts while letting other devices handle less critical tasks. That wasn't because Windows is unusable. It was because the overall experience gave me greater confidence. Confidence matters. Now let's talk about the second half of this experiment. Gaming. This is where people usually assume the whole story falls apart, because gaming has always been Windows territory. And historically, that's been true. But SteamOS quietly changed the conversation. Years ago, Linux gaming was mostly something enthusiasts argued about online. Compatibility was inconsistent. Performance varied wildly. Game support was unpredictable. Today feels completely different. Valve spent years investing in Proton. That compatibility layer became far more than an interesting technical project. It became a strategic weapon. Instead of asking developers to rewrite every game, Valve translated Windows games into something Linux could actually understand. That sounds simple. It isn't. It's one of the most impressive software engineering efforts in modern PC gaming. The result is something people dismissed for years. Thousands of Windows games suddenly became playable somewhere they were never originally designed to run. That's a massive shift. When I installed SteamOS on my handheld gaming device, I expected compromises. Instead, I found something else entirely. Focus. Press the power button. Resume instantly. Play immediately. Pause. Sleep. Resume again within seconds. No clutter. No desktop distractions. No random background software asking for attention. No unnecessary notifications. It feels like using a game console that secretly has the flexibility of a PC. That's a combination Microsoft has struggled to replicate. Here's a real-world example. God of War, modern AAA title, demanding graphics, long sessions. The experience felt smooth enough that I stopped thinking about the operating system entirely. That's probably the highest compliment software can receive. Another example came from Heroes of Might and Magic. Different genre, different expectations, different control scheme. Mouse support remained perfectly usable. Again, nothing extraordinary happened. And that's exactly why it worked. Computers should disappear into the background. The less you notice them, the better they're doing their job. SteamOS also solved a psychological problem I didn't expect: distraction. Windows computers can do almost anything. That's their greatest strength. Ironically, it's also one of their biggest weaknesses. Open the computer intending to play a game. 5 minutes later, you're checking messages, opening browsers, installing utilities, updating drivers, reading emails, watching videos, opening Discord, tweaking settings. Somehow an hour disappears before you've actually played anything. SteamOS removes that temptation. It's almost aggressively dedicated to one purpose: gaming. That focus creates a surprisingly relaxing experience. It's similar to why people enjoy dedicated cameras despite smartphones existing. Purpose-built devices encourage purpose-built behavior. Now here's where things become controversial. I don't think Windows is losing because Apple suddenly became perfect. I think Windows is slowly losing because its competitors became specialized. Apple optimized for creators. Valve optimized for gamers. Meanwhile, Windows continues trying to be everything for everyone. Historically, that strategy made perfect sense. Today, I'm not completely convinced. General-purpose software inevitably carries more complexity, more compatibility, more legacy systems, more edge cases, more maintenance, more compromises. Specialized platforms can ignore many of those burdens. That's why the experience often feels cleaner. Microsoft isn't competing against one operating system anymore. It's competing against ecosystems designed around specific lifestyles. That's a much harder battle. But before anyone declares Windows finished, reality deserves equal attention. There are still significant drawbacks. Digital certificate signing remains easier on Windows in many situations. Certain enterprise authentication systems still expect Windows environments. Some hardware drivers remain Windows first. Professional engineering software frequently stays Windows exclusive. Heavy 3D workflows often favor Windows workstations equipped with powerful NVIDIA GPUs. Those realities haven't disappeared. SteamOS has limitations too. Hardware compatibility isn't universal. Some NVIDIA configurations still present challenges. Certain Intel systems don't achieve the same experience. Anti-cheat support remains inconsistent across several multiplayer games. That's especially relevant if your favorite competitive shooter depends on anti-cheat systems that simply refuse to cooperate outside Windows. For many players, that's an immediate deal-breaker. Modding also deserves attention. Windows still dominates here. Installing community modifications, custom launchers, translation patches, save editors, cheat utilities for offline experimentation. The ecosystem is simply more mature. Even something as simple as unofficial language patches often requires significantly more effort outside Windows. That's not impossible. It's just less convenient. And convenience wins more often than enthusiasts like admitting. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Windows remains unbelievably versatile. If I wanted one machine capable of handling work, gaming, experimentation, obscure software, legacy applications, accessories, niche hardware, random utilities, and nearly every peripheral imaginable, Windows still wins. That's its superpower. Everything, one device, one operating system, infinite possibilities. I actually miss that sometimes. It's easy to criticize Windows until you remember just how much it supports. That flexibility took decades to build. No competitor replaces all of it overnight. So this isn't a story about Windows becoming bad. It's a story about my personal priorities changing. That's an important distinction. When your workflow evolves, your ideal operating system evolves too. The best operating system isn't universal. It's contextual. Something else surprised me during this experiment. I expected to miss Windows every single day. Instead, I mostly remembered individual features, not the platform itself. That's fascinating. It suggests attachment often comes from habits rather than necessity. Many of us continue using software simply because we've always used it. Then one day we accidentally stop. Nothing breaks. Life continues. That realization can be surprisingly powerful. Another interesting trend supports this observation. Developers increasingly build cross-platform software, creative applications, communication tools, cloud services, browser-based workflows, AI assistants. Everything moves toward platform independence. The operatings matter slightly less every year. That's great news for consumers. Competition forces everyone to improve. Apple pushes battery efficiency. Valve pushes gaming innovation. Microsoft pushes compatibility. Each company pressures the others. Everyone benefits. There's also a broader industry implication here. Valve doesn't necessarily need SteamOS to replace Windows completely. It only needs SteamOS to become credible, because once developers treat Linux as a serious gaming platform, Microsoft loses one of Windows' strongest historical advantages. That's a strategic shift worth watching. Remember Steam machines? Many people consider them failures. Commercially, they struggled. Pricing created problems. Hardware consistency became difficult. Timing wasn't ideal. But ideas sometimes fail before technology catches up. Steam Deck proved the concept differently. Instead of asking consumers to replace their gaming PCs, Valve asked a much simpler question. What if PC gaming felt as effortless as a console? Millions of people answered that question. Now SteamOS extends beyond Valve's own hardware. That's where things become genuinely interesting. If more manufacturers adopt SteamOS on gaming devices, competition intensifies. Consumers gain more choice. Developers receive more incentive. The ecosystem grows. That momentum could reshape portable gaming over the next several years. Meanwhile, Apple continues strengthening creative workflows with every new generation of Apple Silicon. Neither company is trying to destroy Windows directly. They're simply making it easier to imagine life without it. That's arguably even more dangerous, because habits rarely disappear through force. They disappear through better alternatives. So where does that leave Windows? Still dominant, still incredibly capable, still unmatched in overall flexibility. But dominance isn't the same thing as inevitability. For decades, Windows wasn't just the biggest platform. It felt like the only realistic platform. That psychological advantage is fading. Today, someone can genuinely build a productive creative workflow on macOS. Someone else can enjoy a satisfying gaming experience on SteamOS. Neither decision sounds ridiculous anymore. That's a huge change. If you told PC enthusiasts 10 years ago that major AAA games like God of War could become part of a Linux-based gaming conversation powered by Proton, many would have laughed. Today, it's normal. If you'd predicted creators would willingly trade massive desktop towers for relatively modest Apple Silicon laptops because the overall experience felt smoother, plenty of people would have doubted that too. Now it's common. The computer industry changes quietly before it changes dramatically. Most revolutions don't arrive with explosions. They arrive through thousands of tiny improvements that eventually become impossible to ignore. That's exactly what happened here. No single feature convinced me. No benchmark converted me. No marketing campaign changed my mind. Hundreds of tiny quality-of-life improvements slowly outweighed one giant advantage. That surprised me more than anything. The biggest lesson wasn't that Windows failed. The biggest lesson was discovering how much of my daily computing no longer depended on Windows at all. And if that realization happened to me without planning it, how many other people are already drifting away without even noticing? Could the future of personal computing belong not to one operating system, but to specialized ecosystems that quietly replace Windows 1 workflow at a time?
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.